My mission and the silent for stigma machine about suicide loss, ideation, and mental health. It is for you to join me. Welcome to Suicide Zen Forgiveness, the podcast that shares powerful stories of suicide law, ideation, and mental health in order to break the silence, stigma, and shame. Our mission is to encourage empathy for those experiencing these challenges. Every narrative serves as a beacon of hope on to touch lives and inspire resilience. Won't you join me in this journey as we share stories to help others to find hope? Please note this podcast is for educational purposes and may contain triggering content. If you're grieving or experiencing mental health issues, please reach out to your local suicide hotline or mental health office for immediate help. And now, let's start the show. It is so lovely to be back. I am really excited, and you'll notice I'm smiling from ear to ear. I have just actually almost pushed my guest, which is really not a good way to start the show, but it's one of those things that sometimes happen. I am so happy to be here with you. As I said, my guest today is the absolutely amazing Barbara Hayward. Thank you so much for coming to join me today.
Amen.
It's down under.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. From down under.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love your accent. I love listening to you. I love all the things you have to say. And I know that our audience will as well. So I am just going to turn it over to you because who better to tell us who you are and what you do than you?
Okay. My professional title, and I have one, is that I'm a medium clairvoyant and a spiritual advisor and a spiritual coach. And that came about by accident, really, around 41 and a half years ago, but who's counting? When I met a lady and I didn't know I was seeking and she took me on as a student and life progressed and here I am today. But what got me to there was a far different story. And that's part of the story that I would like to share with you today. I'm an Australian lady and I live in New Zealand. I've married a New Zealand man, my second marriage. And so the things that happened to me in my personal life all happened in Australia, in Melbourne. The things that happened in my career was basically in New Zealand. So there is a real disconnect between the two. And when I was about 30, I got a divorce. And my divorce came through and I wanted to have a name that was relevant. And because I wasn't any longer Mrs. Gary Coombs because I was divorced and I wasn't Miss Barbara Fair, that ridiculous. And I needed to create a name. And so out of my two boys' names, I created Barbara D. Hayward. The son that I raised, my oldest son that I raised, it was his middle name. And Hayward is the middle name of my youngest son. So I did this by deed poll. It's all legal. And what I didn't know at the time was this was to become my public mark. And so when I was operating as Barb, I wasn't operating very well. And the moment I became Barbara D. Hayward, the public image, I operated fantastic. And I went into so many people. I had my radio show 31 years ago that went for 3 years without internet, I must say. And we had around 35,000 listeners in New Zealand every fortnight. So for back then, that was huge. But what the mask was covering is more important to who I am today. And I'm going to be a little discreet here because it is YouTube or internet. So when I was 4, 5, and 6, I was molested, if I'm allowed to say that. Apparently, according to my parents, as I researched it back, my whole demeanor changed. I was apparently an incredible, loving little girl. My father said to me that he would drive a truck home I had to get out really quickly because as soon as I saw the truck, I would run and then I would dive into his hand, and he had to be ready because I trusted him so much. I just drove into his arm. And whenever he sat, I sat on his lap and everything. And he said to me, one day you changed. I walk in, you would walk out of the room and you were a completely different girl. They didn't bother to figure out what was wrong, but so apparently my mother's, I've got a chip on my shoulder and I should be belted. And that was as far as that was going. Now, unfortunately, I was also a very bright child. And our school, right up in the country, they needed one more student to get another teacher. And in Australia, you start at January the 30th, or whatever the date is, if your birthday is between this and this. So some start at 4.5, some start at 5. And so it's the start of the year. So I was elected to be that child. I knew the alphabet. I knew, because I've got 2 older siblings and I'm a little smart ass anyway. I went to school. Now, I was in prep. We call that kindergarten. I guess Americans call it. And I was there for 10 days and they put me up to grade 1. So consequently, to go into high school in Australia, you do prep to grade 6, then 6, 7 to 11 or 12. I was actually about 9 to 10 years old when I went to high school. So I was pretty smart. And that's where things started to go wrong for me even more. I came from an alcoholic family. This stage we'd moved to Melbourne and the big city and what have you. I was also a naughty girl because my oldest sister was the first grandchild for many decades and a granddaughter. And then my sister was, she's got the beauty baby trophy. And then there's Bar. And that's how it was mentioned. And then there's Bar. So I found my place in the world as to be a brat, if you like, but naughty. And that comes from the molestation, as I've learned later. I got into trouble. I was grounded and Mum and Dad went out. So I decided to go to the milk bar, the dairy, the shop, buy some lollies, whatever it was. On the way, 2 men decided that I was a really good target. So we'll leave it just at that. And so when I got home, I didn't get the lollies, by the way. When I got home, I couldn't tell anybody because I shouldn't have been where I was in the first. Now, I'm not saying it was my fault because it certainly wasn't, but I couldn't tell them because I was going to get into more trouble, the parents that I had. Now, there were things in there that for another day about the abuse and what have you that was in the home. And one was to do with my art, and it took me something like 30 years to pick up a paintbrush again after what had happened. And writing, I was humiliated about my writing in class, and I never wrote again. However, decades later, I wrote a book. Now, I met a boy at a dance because I was a marching girl from the age of 8 to 18, and I loved marching, and that was my outlet. That was where I was liked, and it was kind and what have you. I was still brag, but I was successful, and I got medals and also Australian champion and all sorts of wonderful experiences. However, I did meet a boy, and my parents didn't like him, of course, but they were never really sober, so it didn't really matter. However, we had a conversation. I had to go to an evening for marching where we had trying on our dresses for the season. And this was the final fitting. And the seamstress was there, the chaperone was there, and the seamstress says, "Oh, Barb," she said, "you put on weight." She said, "I've got to take your uniform out. And is there something?" And she said, "Don't put any more weight on because I just won't be able to take any more of the dress out." So on the way, that was a Wednesday night. On the Thursday, my boyfriend came and I said, "Look, we're going to have to do something because the uniforms are not fitting." And we knew that I was pregnant, but we hadn't told anybody. So we made a decision to go to his parents' place first. No, to my parents' place. His were obnoxious, his parents, and mine were drunk. Which one do you go first? So we went to my parents and the swearing continued and the name calling and things like the S word, L-U-T and all that sort of. So we're looking at 19, and then we had to go and confront his parents, and his parents were very authoritarian and very dictatorship. And went quite well, actually. Far better than we wanted because we wanted to married and raised a baby, our baby. And they asked us what we wanted to do. Gary was also in the Army, Navy cadets or Army cadets. And so he was going to go into the Army and do, because he was working at the time, he was going to do quantity surveying and things like that. So we had it all planned. So they said, okay, let's think about it. We'll make an arrangement. Come over and see your parents and we'll have a meeting. We got out there. He took, and I said, that went well. Like he said, oh my God, I can't believe that. So Saturday, I don't know what happened with him Saturday. Not much happened with me because I went marching and I got home and Mum said that his mother had rung and they'd made an arrangement that they were going to be at our house at 2:00 on the Sunday, that I needed to be there. So anyway, 2:00 come. And I'm feeling really good because it went so well. And I was working at the time as an offset printer, which was most unusual for a girl back in the 60s to do this. But the place I worked at, which was T&G Life Insurance, a massive life insurance company in Melbourne, and they were all women and it was in a really good spot. They came and Mum and Dad and his mum and dad walked into the lounge. Gary and I started walking in the lounge and his mother said, go back in the kitchen, both of you. This has got nothing to do with you. We'll decide. And when we want you in, we'll tell you we're ready. Well, we went into being subservient. We went into the kitchen and waited. And I was summoned in, or we were summoned in. And this is what happened. Get ready for it. She said, and she said, don't sit down. I went, we hear that now. I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen. I've got children at home that need my service and I need to go and prepare dinner. She said, expect that you will resign from work tomorrow. I have rung my doctor. We organised it yesterday. He started the organisation of having your baby adopted out. He's organised that. You are to be at Gary will pick you up at 6:00 tomorrow night. You are due to the doctors at 6:30. He will check you out, see how far you are and if everything's okay. And he's already organised you to go into an unwed mother's home until after the baby's born, and you're due there at 10:00 on Saturday. Now, Gary will pick you up on Saturday and take you there and make sure you get there. And by the way, if either of you think for a second that you're going to run away together, we will charge you for statutory rape, Gary, and you will be in jail. So that was it. And right. And then they said, it's all organised and that's what we expect. And we have to go now. Wow. I was 16. And so that's what happened. I went to work the next day and I resigned. It was a great job. And just on the lighter side, because I think it's a moment for lightness, Mrs. Horton was so skinny and so straight and so elegant, so beautiful. She was boss of the printing section. When the cake truck cart came in with the morning coffee, tea and coffee, she always got first pick. And so we all had to stand. Mrs. Horton got hers. Grey hair, elegant, you've got no idea. And so Friday morning, just the last day of my work, they couldn't buy me anything because what do they buy me? Baby clothes? No, there's no baby. I'm just going to have a baby. And so I got first pick of the cake. How gorgeous. And that was the...
know that there's still good people in the world.
There was a lot of good people. So anyway, life unfolded. I went into the girls' home and then Gary was allowed to visit me on a Thursday night. We were to sit in the room together and chat for 2 hours. And then he was to go home and he would pick me up on a Saturday around lunchtime and drop me off at my parents' and pick me up at 2:00 and take me back to the home. And as I've said before, I come from a family of alcoholism. And so when I got home this Saturday, I think I'd been in the home for about a month. And Dad was drunk again. He was having an argument with my sister one up. And it was getting quite mouthy. And so Barbara, being the rebel and the protector, she stood in the middle of it, the belly out like this and the whole thing. And And so my father decided that was the moment to express all his anger at and belted the absolute hell out of me. They got me out of that, and I waited outside for Eric, and I didn't go back until after the baby was born and I signed the papers. In Australia, you get 1 month grace. It's a cooling off period. And so we had a month to counteract the signing of the adoption paper, if you like. But remember, we'd already been told that if we even consider that he was going to jail, so I'd be on my own. Remember going into the hospital to have the baby at Queenville in Melbourne, and which is where all the kiddish girls went. Now, just to put humiliation on humiliation, if you were in the home on a Saturday morning, you were, as a group, if we go out weekly exercise, we had daily exercises in the home, but we had to walk around the block with all our bellies out as a group of maybe 10 or 12, just so the neighbours knew that we were there. So that was humiliating. So anyway, remember, we would be picked up to be taken to the hospital for examinations and taken back by this lady, a friend of Kiddish. And so she picked me up and took me into hospital. And I don't remember a lot of it. I will tell you that. I don't remember a lot. But what I do remember is he was born at 8:30 exactly, and which is quite relevant to a fascinating story if we get time. And they grabbed him, and the nurse took him straight away. And as she was leaving the room, she said, "It's a boy." I did not hear him cry. I did not touch him, because in those days, they believed that if you had no touching, you were bonding. And so no harm done. No harm. No harm done. Yeah. So in hindsight, there's a lot of things that I don't remember, and I do remember. I don't remember a lot of it, but in hospital, I do remember little bits and pieces. So the question I asked in my 50s, 60s, what happened to my milk? Why can't I remember all of it? Why can I only remember bits and pieces? And what I've learned lately in the past 10 years is we were drugged. And so the drugs takes away the milk, and the drugs get you to not remember. And so you can't cry and demand your baby, and you dose up when you're drugged. That was that. So I then went back to Kiddish, and I had to sign the papers. So we had a chapel, and when it's the girls' turn to go in, everybody knew what was going on. It was always at 11 o'clock, because it would take about an hour, and then we'd be going to bed to our room for the day, for the rest of the day, and our meal would be delivered, because they didn't want the other girls to see how much we'd been crying and how distraught we are, because that would upset them or get upset. I went to the chapel to pray, because that's what a good girl does, and I say in a lighthearted way, and I don't mean it in a lighthearted way, that I asked God to help me. And that was a time that God obviously didn't hear me. He was away fishing for the day, because I certainly wasn't helped. And after that time, I was only in the home for a couple more days to gather my things, and I had to go home. So I went home, was at home. I wasn't welcomed home. I was at home. And my mother said it was about 10 days after I got home from Kiddish. And she said, "It's time for you to go and get a job." She said, "Don't think for a minute, I'm going to keep you." She said, "You're able to get a job. You now go and get a job. Put it behind you. Forget it ever happened, because after all you did was have a baby. After all you did was have a baby." So it was a conversation that was never, ever discussed. However, there was one other thing my mother said to me that impacted me in a very great way, for good and for negative. So the good and the bad were running parallel. She said, "You have to keep him now, because no other man will want used goods. No other man would want used goods." That's what I did. Now, did I love him? I thought I loved him, and yes, I did love him. I was 16 years old. I thought I loved him. Now, to go back, what happened to me internally was in the first incident, when I was 4, 5, and 6, that hurt me. That hurt. It hurt. That hurt me.
Oh, absolutely.
And the 12, when I was 12, the incident damaged me. Now, I didn't know how much it damaged me, but I got more angry and I got more defiant. I was still very intelligent about these things. Now, what happened when I was 16 and my baby was taken away? When he was taken away and she said it's a boy, it was like you've got a watch and at 10 past 12, you get a hammer and you go slam. And what I didn't know is when it breaks, it always remains at 10 past 12. Now, I, unknown to me, remained at 16 in all my decision-making. I was broken. I have made some very disastrous decisions in my life that allows me to be in the circumstances and the situations I'm in today. I have got one of the best lives ever anybody can have, and I've got one of the worst lives, running power. Okay, so now I get a job and I've got the boy. I do know he played up on me while we were dating, but I ignored that because my mother said nobody would want you. You would. And so I ended up marrying him to the absolute disgust of both sets of parents. And so had the parents have just backed off, I'm not sure we would have got together. However, we wouldn't have had our kids either. So we got married and I went ahead and had 3 miscarriages. And then I had my what I call my eldest son. And because remember, it's put it behind you as if it never happened. So we call him one. And then I had 2 miscarriages. I had my son, I had 3 miscarriages, had my youngest son. Now, in one of the miscarriages, my father's great advice to me was that unless you change your attitude, you're never going to carry a baby to full term. Get rid of that shit on your shoulder. You've had it since you were 4 years old. Thank goodness they moved away for work.
Empathy wasn't a big thing.
So Gary and I, we become very isolated. Now, where that comes into that, because we are now we're married, we've got 2 young children, we cannot talk about the white elephant in the room. It is far different. 50-odd years ago, it's far different to today. So we cannot talk about the white elephant. And the other thing is that he can't talk because he's not a talker of emotion. And so I didn't take it into consideration because I was broken in my own pain that I couldn't see any other pain. But I did eventually, and that just rocked me. I was in and out of hospitals, psychiatric hospitals. I had many suicide attempts, if I'm allowed to say that word. And I had some pretty serious ones in there. A few of them were a cry for help, but I remember one particular, I've just got a double rainbow out there. I remember one particular hospital I was in, his mother had come down to take care of the boys, and she came to visit, and she said, "You've got to pull yourself together." She said, "You're dragging my son down to the gutter with you." So I had all these wonderful words of advice that was encouraging not. And what came out of it for me is that men hurt me and women abandoned me. And so I had nobody. And I was breaking down all over the place. Our marriage did not and could not survive. It just could not survive. I met him at 15 and he left when I was 30. So I did half my life with him. And there was a whole lot of behavior there. I turned alcohol and I was pretty drunk most of the time until I met Dennis. I was a broken 16-year-old trying to raise 2 boys. And they're great kids. My youngest is 45 now and my eldest, the middle one is now 48. After the marriage had broken down, I was going away with a group of people for the weekend and we were going down to a place called Phillip Island. And I had said to Gary that I'm going to tell the boys about, and that's what I call my Brett child. And I had the opportunity. Nathan said, "Oh, I really want to go to the YouTube concert." And because he was sick, far beyond any understanding. Harley, I think I shouldn't have said my youngest son's name. I do apologize, but I hope he never sees this. But my son Harley, who I'm allowed to speak about publicly, he said, "What? So is that why Grandma and Granddad treat you like a piece of sand and walk all over you as if you're trash?" And I said to him, "Yes, it is." And then he said to me, with the biggest smile, "That makes me so happy, Mum." What? He said, "I never wanted to be the eldest, and now I'm not the eldest." He was so happy, so happy. I wanted to, because Gary had said to me, "Do you want me to come with you?" And I said, "No, thanks, because I am actually the only one on this whole earth plane that knows the whole story. Because I was the only one there giving birth. I'm 16. I had no support system. I have no idea at 16 what gave them the right to sign on my behalf. I had no authority. I couldn't get married. I couldn't go into the army. I couldn't drink. I couldn't smoke. I had to have a guardian. I was 16. However, at that, I didn't apparently. So that's my anger for later. So I went through the breakdown system, and I went to a psychiatrist, and he had a group where we'd talk in the group. Because, you see, I only had a baby. I didn't catch the baby. Nothing like that happened. So where's your problem? This is because I was a depressed person that I was having breakdowns. This is because I didn't know how to handle money, and I wasn't good, and I was wrecking the finances. This is because I came out of an alcoholic. This is because. And anyway, Gary left, incredibly discomfortable wife, who was raising 2 children the best she knew how with what she had, which was very little. Thank goodness they turned out to be incredible people. And I did say into the future, I said to Harley one day, he would have been 22, and I said to him about an issue in his world, and I said, "Harley, I am so proud of you. The absolute awareness of who you are despite your upbringing." And he said to me, "No, Mum, it's because of my upbringing." So we're still all very close. So let's go down the way. I did meet Dennis. I met this lady, Crystal, who took me into the spiritual world, and long story short, I met Dennis and we came to New Zealand to live. And that's where my career as Barbara Hayward began. But there was always this brokenness underneath. I don't trust anybody. I didn't understand for a very long time why. Now, one of the really interesting parts, if I may, that Red Charles was born, that's not his name. I did find out what his name was. When he was 18, I was with a friend who had a baby taken as well. And we decided to go looking for our children, which was illegal in Australia at the time. And she met her daughter, and his mother wrote me a letter to say that he's not interested, has no interest whatsoever, and please never contact him again. He'll contact you if he ever wants to, which is unlikely. That's what I did. That's what I did. Because I'm subservient. I know when to. I'm a rebellion person, but I'm subservient. And that was always in the background. Now, I knew that Brett Charles was born on the 31st of January, 1970 at 8:30 in the morning. Harley was about 4 years old at the time, and for some reason I got the adoption paper out. And I was wrong. His birthday was on the 30th of January. I was wrong at 8:30. Now, where this is interesting is Harley. His birthday's on the 30th of January, 9:50 a.m. So they're born on the same day. And that did my head, bar 50 minutes. And so then I read it. I really wasn't coping. When Harley was a baby, when I would bath him or anything, I would lock all the doors and the windows because it took me about 12 months to figure out that nobody was going to take him away,
Right.
that he was here to stay. There's so many consequences. And I didn't understand that what was happening in the meetings was that they would enter into the world of deep pain and I had to close it down. And I become an expert by this stage to do this because I started at 4 years old of how to do this. And displacement, I think we call it. And so I did it so expertly because I'm intelligent that even apparently the psychiatrist said it took me months to figure out the moment. I can't figure out the moment you do it, but I know when you've done it, and I closed the conversation down. So I became an expert in. And long, short story, I became famous in my province for my work, for the radio and all the good work that I did. I had one of my specialties was medical, and I had doctors in the region that would send their patients to me because they couldn't figure it out, and they knew I would, and then they took their treatment off what I said. So there was a lot of marvelous things that I was able to accomplish. Life goes on. Before I met Dennis and after Gary, I did have a couple of very serious attempts and nearly succeeded. I wanted to succeed, by the way. And that wanting to succeed took me up until I was 60, believe it or not. And life is unfolding. We're moving countries often, Australia, back to New Zealand. And then Dennis wanted to go to Perth, into the mines. We're a day apart in age. So we were born the same year. I'm a day older, 1 day a year. I'm a year older than him. And so we went to Perth, and he was away in the mines for 2 weeks on and 1 week off at home. And so in this time, lots of things were happening. Now, unbeknownst to me, what was happening was that mask that I put on that was so successful for decades was absolutely crumbling down. And it was breaking down. I remember being in the shower one day having an absolute hissy fit. And I was saying to God, I want to come home. I want to come home. I'm broke. I've served you. I've served the people with love, with great love. The children, 2 boys, one hasn't got children, one started to have children, and they will cope. I know that they will miss me, but they will cope. And I just want to go. And it's not a caveat, not a begging, but I said, if there is a purpose for me, it's up to you. But there was more than God spoke to me, if you like, and gave me the title of my book that I've written and how to write it and all sorts of other things that I've written in the book, which you can't buy at the moment. I've published it, I've got it, but I don't know how to market it, and I don't know how to get it into a Kindle. That'll happen one day. So then I'm now 60. It's my 60th birthday. It's April the 8th, 11 years ago. And I flew Harley over to Perth because he's in Melbourne, and we're sitting having a drink. I needed to talk to Harley about aspects of his life. And Dennis being the very good, he went for a walk. And so I can have a talk to my son. And he doesn't come in on anything unless it's absolutely vital. The only place that Dennis will come in is if I try to contact Harley. He's elusive and he's in his own universe. And he will, if he texts him and says, phone your mother at the time, he phones his mother. That's the only thing he does because he understands. And so he goes for a walk. I had this very long talk to Harley, and we're sitting on the balcony of the most beautiful apartment with the dolphins swim in the marina. And he gets a text, and this is the text that changed my life. And he goes, oh, Sandy wants me to phone her. I go, phone her. Sandy is his father's partner. And so, long, short story, he goes into the office. He comes out after about 15 minutes and said, oh, that was interesting, Mel. And I go, what was that? He said, but it involves you. No, he said, when Sandy got home today, there was the letter waiting for her. And it was addressed to Dad. I said, addressed to your dad? He said, yeah. I said, your dad's been dead for about 3 or 4 years. Why is he getting a letter? He said, that's what's interesting, Mum. And long short story, he said, it involves you. And I said, I have not had an involvement with your father for 30 years, 35 years. What is this about? No, Mum. He said, it's from a place called Anglicare. And I said, who's Anglicare? He said, Mum. I said, no. And Dennis's back. Dennis, you better open that bottle of wine sparkly, because Mum's going to need it. I said, what? He said, I think Brett's looking for us. No. It's like 43 years. No. He said, think it is, Mum. Because Anglicare wrote to Dad saying, are you Gary whatever of this birthday? If you're not and you know who it is, can you hand the letter over? He said, but I think it is. I think he's looking for us. So long short story, yes, it was. Now you have to remember, I didn't think I was going to get emotional. You have to remember that I married his father, so my other two boys and he are full brothers. Long short story, after a tumultuous 11 years, he's still in our life. So I have my three sons. Yeah. One of the hardest, it's such a hard journey to bring back a family after.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because he was raised very well. He had very good adoptive parents and he had a great life. I was one of the blessed, and I am one of the blessed. He's back in my life. So that is the crazy version. But I joined a group called ARMS in Melbourne, Association for Relinquishing Mothers. And we're not relinquishing. There is a statue in one of the Melbourne gardens from us, and the state government, it says taken, not given. Our babies were taken. We didn't give them. We had no choice. We had to, it was, and on my Barbara D page, which I don't associate with a lot, I said my signature, but not my choice. My signature, but not my choice. Now, my story is a representative of millions of other women around the world. Absolute millions. In Australia, between 1970 or 1960 something and 1984, there was 250,000 babies. So you multiply that, we're not a big country. So you go to Ireland, you go to England, you go to Scotland, you go to America, which is an incredibly abusive way of doing adoption. And there's no good way anyway, but then you've got Canada and you've got India and you've got all the countries around the world. There's millions and millions of displaced
all those homes for unwed mothers.
Yeah, and displaced babies that claim that they are placed. That's my anger. So when I say that I understand trauma, I do. I've had that experience. And where I look at the positive is that it makes me a much more compassionate person in my work. It makes me understand with so much more empathy. Now, there are days still that I don't want to be here, but I know that now I don't have a choice. I haven't taken that upon seriously since. It's the brokenness, and I've done 7 years of healing the heart. Obviously, not perfectly, but I'm certainly at peace with what has happened in the past. I understand. Now, before we close, and I do know we have to close, I want you just to share a conversation I had with a counsellor that I had in Perth. And she only dealt with birth mothers and adoptive children. And she said, know what he's looking for, don't you? It's his identity is what he's really looking for. And I said, he wants to, so I can't remember. And I said, I know him inside out. He has no idea how much I know him. I know everything about him without him telling me. Now, it could be my trade, but it could just be the bond. And she said, but I said, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know me. And she said, and I want everybody to take this to her. She said, how could he not know you? He was in your tummy, under your ribs, beside your heartbeat for 9 months. How could he not know?
Oh my God.
How could he not
Barbara. Oh, my heart goes out to you. Everything you went through. I'm shocked that I didn't put it together before that all the brothers are brothers. One death?
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't even twig to that till you said it. What I will say is it was a lovely look into you. This is not the last time I will have you on the show.
Oh,
I think we have a lot more to uncover. And I'm so grateful, Dr. Rennie, for introducing me to you. I am so grateful to you for openly sharing your story with us and for being so raw and so real. It's not easy. You share our stories. It's not easy because there is a piece of us that relives the trauma every time we put it out there. The beauty I want the audience to realize is every time you share your story, we lighten our burden.
Yeah.
And by offering hope to others, that too is a bonus for us. And I think that's incredibly important. And I think you have so much more to offer my audience. There is so much still to unpack. But you radiate joy. And from the first moment that we met, just touched by the sheer depth of your, I'm going to say service. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's what I feel, is that you are so deeply in service to humanity that I think it's just incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that you're sitting back in your life.
Well,
And more to the point, I love what you just said about him. How could he not know? How could they all not know?
yeah.
I think that's a really important point because I know for a fact it happened in Canada a great deal. It happened
Yeah.
all over at home in Scotland and Ireland, England and Wales, and everywhere else, as you said. And more to that point, we had entire number of decades where they literally scooped up children from their family, Indigenous children.
Yeah.
Because they thought they knew better.
We did one in Australia as well, called the Stolen Generation.
Finally, it's only the past few years that this has really come to light. Much as some people knew, I think most people couldn't stand to keep their eyes open to what was happening.
Yeah.
On that note, I can't wait for our next chat. I know the audience also will be quite excited to have you back. As we have everything, biography to how to get a hold of Barbara and a lovely headshot you'll find below the pod. It is absolutely lovely to have you here with me. I thank you so much. And to the audience, as usual, I say make the very most of your day every day. And we're going to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here for another inspiring episode of Suicide Zen Forgiveness. We appreciate you tuning in. Please subscribe and download on your favorite service and check out SZF's YouTube channel or Facebook community. If you have the chance to leave a 5-star rating or review, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please refer this to a friend you know who may benefit from the hope and inspiration from our guests. Suicide Zen Forgiveness was brought to you by the following sponsors. Truel Social Media, the digital integration specialists. Let them get you rockin' page 1 in the search results. Canada's keynote humorist Judy Croon, motivational speaker, comedian, author, and stand-up coach at Second City, Judy has been involved for over a decade in the City Street Outreach Program in Toronto.
The ultimate podcasting. This is great for you if you're just starting your podcast or if you've been running it for a while. It's filled with tools, templates, and training for starting, growing, and monetizing your podcast. Get access to time-saving systems and strategies for accelerating your process at each step. Find new connections and collaborations in the uplifting podcasting community. I look forward to seeing you there.
Do you have a story to share? Do you know someone you think would be a great guest? Please go to szf42.com. And for our American listeners, that's szf42.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again.